Hi, it's Nicole. This is my May wrap-up. I'm going to tell you about all the books I read in the month of May, and also towards the end of the video, I'm going to show you some of the books I plan to read in June. Sorry this video is slightly later than usual because I wanted to show you the London vlog as soon as it was ready. So in May, I attempted 2 readathons, the historical fiction readathon as well as the Asian readathon, and I didn't do either well. I think the lesson for the future is I should just stick to one. For example, because I decided to join the Asian readathon so last minute, I didn't spend much time doing research and ended up choosing 3 books, so 2 novels and 1 non-fiction. 3 books, all very poetic, philosophical, and in some ways abstract, and that didn't end very well. You will see a bit later. So I will talk about these books in the order that I read them. So the first book is Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. This is one of Shakespeare's comedies, and I've said a lot about it already. I made 2 videos almost exclusively on this play. So in the first one, I told you a little summary about what this play is about, and we looked at some gorgeous photos from some of the previous productions, and we looked at the website of this current production, the summer 2022 production. We looked through some photos, we looked at its setting, and also watched a trailer video on the website as well. If you remember that trailer video, we watched it together, and there were some balloons, some really shiny tinsels, and blue eyeshadow, and a cupcake. Well, a few cupcakes. I think I can report that. I don't remember seeing them during the show, but the show did have a garden party feel to it. And the second video was the London vlog, where we watched the play in Globe Theatre, and I gave some initial thoughts during the interval of the play and also some first impressions straight afterwards. It's been a few days and I have been thinking about it a bit more. I think the first half of the show definitely delighted me and surprised me more than the second half of the show. I think the reason is the second half had most of the conflicts and things were building up to a climax. It was just emotionally more intense and it was heavier. And ultimately, the second half had most of the, well, a lot of the well-known lines, and I guess it was just more difficult to impress the audience and stand out from all the previous productions. For example, when you hear Benedict say, "I do love nothing in the world so well as you," it's not that strange. You know, in a few seconds time, Beatrice is going to ask Benedict to kill Claudio, and then she says, "Kill Claudio," and you think, here he goes. Or Claudio's grieving at Hero's tomb, or their reconciliation. It's just, you know it's coming. But there was a scene when Benedict said, "You have killed a sweet lady." That was a very electrifying, that was a very powerful scene. I loved that one. I think generally the first half of the show was just more light-hearted, and there was more scope for imagination and reinterpretation. It concentrated on shaping the characters. There was only one Beatrice, but there were so many ways to portray her. Who was our Beatrice? The Beatrice of this summer 2022 production. Same with Benedict, Claudio, and Hero. Who were they in this 2022 production? I think the uniqueness of these actors came through most in the first half of the show. So we felt like we knew them, we fell in love with them, we cared, and we were emotionally invested by the time we saw all the conflicts in the second half of the show. And I think that was brilliant. The next one is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. This is a short story collection published in 1979. These are fairy tale retellings including Beauty and the Beast, Puss in Boots, Earl King, The Snow Child, Sleeping Beauty, Little Red Riding Hood. And The Bloody Chamber, the title story, also the longest one, is based on Bluebeard. It gave me the vibe of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. Angela Carter specifically said these are not adult fairy tales. She wrote them to explore the hidden meanings and potentials. This might not be adult fairy tales, but they were definitely not for children. The stories are very dark, very gothic, and the writing style is a bit too ornate for me. I prefer straightforward storytelling. And it's full of violence and sex, especially there are lots of explicit description of sex. And they might be symbolic or have deeper meanings, but I just don't like reading a man raping a dead girl. If I'm not reading this right, or if you have recommendations for me to read a bit more on Angela Carter, please leave me a comment. I'm not getting this. I don't like it. Next one is On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I picked this one up because of the Asian Readathon. This one was a fiction about a Vietnamese family living in the US and is told through the eyes of a boy and later on a young man. I was most struck by the devastating effect of war over generations on families and young people. I read Finding My Father last month, and I also read Transcendent Kingdom maybe last year, and this book really reminded me of those, not the writing style but the social issues they discuss. Broken family, absence of father, racism, mental illness, poverty, drug addiction, and teenage death. We watch all this hardship experienced by a very tender-hearted, small and vulnerable boy. We watch how he tried to survive. He's like a small tree in a dark corner in the garden, twisting its branches and squeezing through fences in order to get to the sky and the sun. He was so hungry for love, and it made me very sad. The language and the writing are beautiful and poetical, but because it's poetical, it's sometimes a bit abstract and I don't always follow, but that's just me not getting poetry. The next one is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I picked this one up because of the historical fiction readathon. This is definitely one of my favorites of the month. I made a video discussing Dickens' attitudes towards the French Revolution. Was he on the side of the people or was he on the side of the aristocrats? I made a whole video about that, so if you're interested, please give it a watch. But in this video, I'm going to tell you why I loved it so much. If you've been following me for a while, you know that one of my favorite books last year was William Makepeace Thackeray's Vanity Fair. Among all the chapters in Vanity Fair, my favorite were the ones before, during and after the Battle of Waterloo. Dickens and Thackeray both write about ordinary people's life against the background of war and social unrest. I think I also loved that element in Gone with the Wind. I think I just love the contrast between the overwhelming force of war and the vulnerable but resilient individual human life. That often brings tears to my eyes. The next one is Dear Friend, From My Life I Write to You in Your Life. I picked this one up also because of the Asian Readathon. This is a memoir of Yun Li. She's a Chinese author living in the US. This was this was the only non-fiction book I planned for May, and I was looking forward to it, but I read about 15% and I didn't finish it. It was philosophical, reflective. A lot of it was about her thoughts and feelings, especially in the context of her mental health issue. Maybe this was not the right book to start with. The problem was, every night I would read about 30 minutes, and by the next evening I couldn't remember what I read the night before. It's a very different kind of memoir to Jonathan Bates' Mad About Shakespeare. I could retell his stories, I could keep notes, but these paragraphs and sentences just slipped through my fingers and I couldn't remember any of it. I think it's poem-like. Maybe that's the problem. Poems. I need to work on the poems. The next one is How Do You Live by Yoshino Ganzaburo. I also picked this one up because of the Asian Readathon. It's fiction, strictly speaking, but I think it blurs the boundary a bit. The story is written in two halves, but it's not like first half and second half, but it's written in pairs, so it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, like that. So first part and second part is a pair. if you know what I mean. So the first parts of each pair is about this 15-year-old boy called Copper and his school friends. He had 3 school friends, and they do all the normal school things. They go to lessons, they play games, they face bully, they visit each other's family, all that kind of thing. And Copper has an uncle who plays a guide and the teacher role to Copper. So the second half of each pair are his reflections on Copper's daily events, introducing ideas, ways of thinking, ways of living to Copper, and these are written in letter and diary entry form for Copper to read. This book really reminds me of Sophie's World, if you read that one. That one was also written in pairs of 2 halves, so stories and then philosophical reflections. And another thing that reminds me of it is the way the book is typeset, if that's the right word. So the first halves, so the Copper's stories, they are printed in a serif font, and the reflections from Copper's uncle is printed in a sans serif font. I hope you can see on the screen. It's very interesting, and that really reminds me of Sophie's World. It covers a whole range of random topics: Newton and science, Napoleon and history, food production, and human relationship across the globe, and all sorts. This English translation exists largely thanks to Miyazaki's upcoming animation film. So this book was actually written in 1937, before the Second World War, and this English translation only came out 2021, and Neil Gaiman wrote a foreword for it. At some point when I was reading, I can really see in my mind how the animation is going to look like, but at some parts I really wonder how Miyazaki is going to present such complicated thought processes and emotions to the audience, like visually. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the film. Last one is A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. This is my first Indian novel, and if you watched my London vlog, you'd know that I was very pleased to discover this novel this month because it fits the challenges of both Asian readathon and historical fiction readathon. But because it's very long, I'm going to take my time, and I haven't finished it this month. I've read about 30%, and I've been slowly navigating through some Indian culture, a lot of culture differences, and it's fascinating. It's a whole new world. I'm really enjoying it. The novel was written in 1991, but is set in 1951. Some part of it really remind me of Pride and Prejudice. There's this mother figure who really reminds me of Mrs. Bennet, whose whole life's ambition is to marry off all her daughters to good families, to suitable men. It gives a lot of Indians' view on marriage. And also you see men at workplace. There is this university lecturer teaching English literature. You also see men working in different trades like shoemaking, but you also meet government officials, ministers, and watch them debating in parliament. And also you meet women, what their roles are in the society, what they can do, what they cannot do. Some of them live in various degree of seclusion, some openly debate in parliaments, and I find that all quite interesting. You see different religions, you see different family dynamics. There are a lot of families and they all seem to marry each other, so there's a huge cast and it can be a bit intimidating. But I can't remember who said it. A while ago I learned that you shouldn't be intimidated by a large book with a large cast, because if the author is good, he or she will introduce them one by one to us, especially the important one will come back to the story again and again so we can get to know them. It's like if you get into a room with a lot of strangers, so you have to get to know them quickly, but you wouldn't expect yourself to know them all in one go very well. Their family background, their temperaments, their friendship, what they do, what they like. So we shouldn't worry about getting to know a big cast in a story either. I think it's especially important to remember this when you read translated literature. A Suitable Boy is not a translated book, but a lot of the names, well, most of the names are Indian names and they spell a bit different, they sound a bit different, so it's extra intimidating. Same with Russian books. I find Russian books intimidating as well because the name is long and unfamiliar and it's hard to remember who's who. But just go with it. If the author throws a lot of name at you at the beginning, just go with it and they will come back to you. I'm reading A Suitable Boy on my Kindle. I think in this case Kindle does have some advantages. I think 3 mostly. First of all, it's light and you can read the text in a normal font size. I haven't actually flick through a Suitable Boy paperback, but I know it's big, but also I presume the text must be quite small to fit such a long novel into a paperback. But a Kindle is lighter to hold and you can adjust the font size any size you like. So that's one advantage. The second advantage is the search in dictionary and search in Wikipedia. That comes in handy, especially there are a lot of cultural references and familiar words and phrases. You can search in Kindle immediately. It doesn't interrupt the flow as much. And the third one is also a search function. You can search a person's name and find out, where did I meet this person last? In what context? What did he do? Which family does he belong to? Is he married to anybody? So that I find that very useful, especially when there's a large cast. I'll keep reading A Suitable Boy in June and I look forward to watching the BBC TV adaptation. And I am very curious how they fit a 1400 pages novel into a 6-part miniseries. I look forward to that. In June, I'm going to celebrate 100-year anniversary of the publication of Ulysses by reading Ulysses for the second time, and also I'm going to read A Portrait of a Young Man as an Artist, also written by James Joyce. So A Portrait of a Young Man as an Artist is about Stephen Dedalus, and Stephen Dedalus also appears in Ulysses, but a few years later, if that makes sense. So A Portrait is about Stephen when he's younger, and then Ulysses happens later in his life. And also I started reading Bill Bryson's Shakespeare, World as a Stage, and a colleague gave that to me just this month, perfect timing, so I'm going to read that. For Shakespeare himself, I read a couple of tragedies recently and a comedy last month as well, so I'm going to read one of his histories. We'll see how that goes. And obviously I'm going to carry on with A Suitable Boy. I thought it was going to be hard work. I don't know why I thought that, but it's entirely delightful. I'm enjoying it. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.